With Russian attacks on Ukraine again intensifying and the West pledging to supply Kyiv with modern tanks, the war in Europe is heading for further escalation. Tamila Tasheva, permanent representative of President of Ukraine in the Autonomous Republic of Crimea, spoke with Rudroneel Ghosh about the ground situation, Crimea's place in the conflict, and why the world should stand with Ukraine. The first question that Rudroneel asked to Tasheva that, could you briefly describe the current situation in Ukraine? We are facing full-scale Russian invasion today. But I would like to remind you that this war did not start last year, but 9 years ago, in 2014, with the Russian occupation of Crimea and the war in eastern Ukraine. In 2022, the war was further escalated with massive Russian attacks on our people, cities and civilian infrastructure. There are regular Russian missile attacks in different parts of our country, especially targeting civilian assets like ordinary houses, hospitals, power stations, schools and playgrounds. The Russians have also committed serious war crimes in places like Bucha and Mariupol. We are in this situation today because we are fighting imperialism and decided to distance ourselves from the Russian Empire. Now that Western partners have decided to supply Ukraine with modern tanks, will this not exacerbate the war? Given the atrocities and destruction that Russian forces have carried out during this war against our people, we simply cannot have negotiations with Moscow at this point. President Zelensky has made our position clear. Our aim is to liberate all occupied Ukrainian territories, including Crimea and the Donbas region. We are using Western weapons to defend our country, not attacking anyone else. Weapons gives us a chance to liberate not only our territories but also our people who are suffering under Russian occupation. For what Ukrainians are facing today is genocide. We are trying to survive here. As a Crimean Tatar, could you please explain the significance of Crimea in the context of this war? Russia has used Crimea as a military base for offensive operation against Ukraine. And the Russian regime has been guilty of persecuting Crimean Tatars. Because in history the Crimean Peninsula was colonized by imperialist Russia. Before 1783, Crimean Tatars had their own state, the Crimean Khanate. Around 95% of the population in the territory were Crimean Tatars. But after the occupation of Crimean Tatar state by the Russian regime, the Crimean Tatar population was deported out of the Crimea and replaced with ethnic Russians. And in 1944, they deported all Crimean Tatars out of the peninsula. Hence, we can say that the Russian regime never recognized Crimean Tatars and wanted to get rid of them. But Ukrainian has recognized indigenous communities like the Crimean Tatars, and Crimea today is Ukrainian land. The Tatar community has been carrying out non-violent resistance against Russia, demanding their return to Crimea. In fact, Tatar leaders have been majorly influenced by the Mahatma Gandhi's ideology of non-violent struggle. Many believe that Moscow will do something catastrophic if Ukraine seeks to liberate Crimea. After the liberation of Kherson by Ukrainian forces last year, people started believing that we have a chance at liberating Crimea too. But others started fearing that Putin could use nuclear weapons if there was a move on Crimea. However, we understand that Putin can use tactical nuclear weapons at any moment because last autumn Moscow announced the annexation of 4 Ukrainian territories: Donetsk, Luhansk, Zaporizhia and Kherson. So our liberation of Kherson can be construed by them as attacking Russian territory, justifying their possible use of tactical nukes. Some argue that an operation to liberate Crimea could be bloody, but it has been bloody since the beginning of the occupation. Because the Russians have targeted a lot of people in Crimea. There are more than 150 political prisoners in Crimea and hundreds of others have been arrested or kidnapped, including Crimean Tatars. But the Russian people, not just Moscow, believe Crimea is Russian territory. Crimea is a peninsula interlinked with mainland Ukraine, both geographically and economically. But Moscow has implanted this idea of the saintly status of Crimea in the minds of the Russian people through propaganda. So, this message, right from the beginning, has been false. That's why I am sure that in reality the issue of Crimea is not as important for the Russian people as their deteriorating economic situation. How does Ukraine see India's role during the course of this war? First of all, we are very grateful to India for providing us humanitarian assistance during the war. President Zelensky has already put forward our peace formula, which was communicated to the Indian side. And we really hope that New Delhi will support this proposal. Obviously, ending this war is a priority for countries of the global south given the impact on the food and energy security. When this war began, many had predicted and some had even hoped that Ukraine would capitulate in 3 days. But we proved them wrong. Ukraine has shown it is fighting for its people's sovereignty and way of life. And therefore, we hope that the world, including India, will support us in this fight.